You may be seated. Will you pray with me? God, may the words of my mouth and the meditations of all our hearts be pleasing in your sight and transformative in ours. For you are our rock and our Redeemer. Amen. You have carried the final box up the stairs, taking far longer than you really need to walk down the long hallway to her new room. And when you place it on the bed, you start to unpack it. Honey, where do you want the coffee pot? But she just rolls her eyes at you and looks at her new roommate. Mom, I've got it. You can go. You can go. As if you want to leave, to climb back into the car for the long journey home in an empty car returning to an empty house. 18 years gone, just like that. It hardly seems like enough time. Have you said everything you needed to say? Have you given her what she needs to succeed? Children, I am only with you for a short time longer, Jesus says. Or perhaps it is at a bedside, when you take his hand, the soft skin like silk and thin like crepe paper, his brow damp, and you know this could be it. What hasn't he told you yet? 80 years hardly seems like enough time, and yet what more could there be to say? Children, I am with you for only a short time longer. This is the context for today's gospel reading. The final conversation, the final situation in which we have all found ourselves in one way or another. A child to college, the last visit with a parent or partner or friend, a family member sent to war. Here, Jesus' 3 years of ministry are done and gone, and it hardly seems like enough time, but Jesus looks out at his friends, the ones he has gathered together, and he knows this is it. What hasn't he said? What will they remember when the going gets hard, when he is not there to correct them or to support them? This is perhaps his last chance to tell them everything they need to know to carry out his work. Their work. God's work. And don't you think he probably puts his head in his hands and laughs just a little to himself? Judas has just left to give him over to the authorities. He knows that in a few short hours, Peter is going to freeze up and deny even knowing him, and Thomas is over at the far end of the table pretending that none of this is happening. These are his people, the ones that he has chosen. And yet he knows they will be fine. But how can he put it so they will remember, even if they remember nothing else? How can he simplify it to the essentials? Listen, children, I am with you for only a short time longer. Here's how I want you to remember me. Here's how I want you to be known. Love. That's it. Love. When things get tough, which they are about to, when you find yourself persecuted and lost and lonely even, all I want you to remember is this love that I have for you. If you can hold that kind of love for one another, you will be fine. Now, the word used for love in this text is agape in the Greek. Most likely hav in the Aramaic that Jesus would have spoken. This is the love that God has for the world. In Greek, there are 4 kinds of love. That one has for your family, for your friends, the romantic kind of love, and agape, which is unconditional or divine love full of grace and charity. And that's what makes this commandment new, because surely he has told them to love before. But they are not to love one another as family. Families end. They are not to love one another as friends or as romantic partners, but unconditionally, with the kind of love that lifts the other up, that places the other's well-being before their own, that seeks the well-being of the others before their own, that extends grace in wrongdoing and charity in all things. It is a strenuous commandment, and yet it is phrased simply enough that a child could understand. A dying wish. And this is indeed what the disciples did after the crucifixion, after the resurrection and the ascension. When they were on their own, they banded together in love. Coming together out of a time of darkness, they realized that indeed God was making all things new, and it was time for them to do the same. They held property in common, they held one another's interests above their own, and they were known for their love. The church flourished because of their love. We are here this morning because of their love for one another. Isn't that remarkable? Now you will see in just a moment or two that in your annual report, this is marked as a State of the Church sermon. And it is marked as such because it strikes me that this is precisely where we find ourselves today. On the precipice of a new time in this church's life together, already and not yet. Now, over the past month, I have spent a great deal of time with you all listening to your stories in this place. I will continue to do so, so if I haven't gotten to sit down with you yet, your time is coming. But one thing has already become clear to me. Newcomer or old friend, what you have told me is that these past 10 years have been tumultuous. Any pastoral transition is a challenging one for a congregation. This is no surprise. And you have had more transitions than I could list quickly. Beginning with the retirement and tragic and untimely death of your beloved Bob Lee, continuing right up through the successful interim of Carrie. I know that there have been hard words and times of darkness, times when I am sure for many of you it wasn't clear how to move forward. I know that you have struggled, and I believe it is important to speak plainly about this, particularly now. Because if the Christian story teaches us anything, it is to face the hard things, for that is where God appears. Not to dwell on them, of course, but to mark them, that we might look for the signs of resurrection that emerge. And indeed, they are emerging. What is most remarkable to me is you all here together. You are here today. The sunlight is streaming in. The music is joyful. And the state of this church is as it was at the very beginning. Behold, God said, I am making all things new. Like those first disciples facing the hardest time they had ever known, you, the members and friends of First Church, are choosing love. And make no mistake, that is a choice. Familial love, romantic love, these might come more automatically, even seeming sometimes from obligation, but agape, unconditional love, where you put someone else's needs before your own, that is a continual choice. One that we must continue to make day after day, team meeting after team meeting over the course of this next year. Write this down, the scripture says, for these words are trustworthy and true. This is how everyone will recognize that you are my disciples, when they see the love you have for each other. I am making all things new is both a promise and a dream already and not yet. You are the signs of life, the gospel's promise in this place. You have chosen love and charity and self-sacrifice toward the larger goal of creating something new, better, more lovely, and sacred. You have done so in any number of ways. Certainly you have given yourself in pledging of your financial resources, the currency of our common life. You have given yourself in your time and made gifts of your gifts. And as we enter into this new year together, full of the promise of the newness of the love that is yet to come, I think it is only fitting that we pause for a moment and recognize the love that has been in this place, made manifest, incarnate, fleshy, in you. And so in just a few moments, I'm going to read a list of ways people have volunteered themselves in love in this place. And I'm going to invite Amy Mellencamp, church president, forward to help me with this now. Now, as she gathers forward, I will say there is always a risk inherent in doing this. Someone will be forgotten, a ministry omitted. I trust that you know this list is not exhaustive, but only representative. And what I'm going to ask you to do is stand as you are able, body or spirit, when a ministry you have participated in is called out. They are, of course, in no particular order.
Steve Hyde, past president.
Members of the search committee.
Those who have helped organize our fifth Sundays and other worship opportunities.
Those who have served as team leaders.
Participated on a ministry team.
Those who organized and contributed to Carrie's farewell celebration.
Many of you who have served as pick-a-party hosts.
Our Puerto Rican and India travelers.
People donating and purchasing Yet's auction items.
Our lawnmowers and our gardeners.
Members of the choir.
Members of the bell choir.
The youth choir.
Our possibility shop volunteers.
People painting and improving children's spaces.
Our Peace Camp volunteers.
Sacred Spaces volunteers.
Sunday school teachers.
Share Christmas volunteers.
What I gather is an enormous and ongoing task, all of our dishwashers.
Those who've helped at funeral celebrations and receptions.
Those who have participated in the bazaar.
Volunteer office staff.
Those who have worked as part of the flower ministry or flower team, contributing flowers.
Pastor and pastoral care volunteers.
Ushers.
Dismas House volunteers.
Small potatoes volunteers.
Meals on Wheels volunteers.
Cleanup day volunteers.
Harvest dinner volunteers.
Pageant volunteers.
Ronald McDonald House volunteers.
Readers.
Candle lighters.
Men's breakfast participants.
Cots walkers.
Cleaners. If you have participated in our stewardship campaign, organizing or pledging.
If you have attended an adult education event.
Okay, friends, look around. Perhaps most important of all, have you attended worship? I am so serious. Showing up is the ultimate act of faith. So take a look around the sanctuary right now. Every single one of you. Every single one of you, from our youngest folks to those who have been here 70 years, has given of yourself in love of this place and one another.
This is the state of the church.
And it is strong. Thanks be to God.